All right, good morning. My name is Courtney Collingridge. I am the office manager for the Dean's office, and we just want to thank you so very much for making the time to come here to TA training. You as TAs play such a vital, pivotal role for our college. We could not be successful without you. So we really appreciate you being here and helping us. Before we begin, please make sure you take a moment and mark your attendance using the QR code. That is a very important way for us to make sure you get credit for being here. So we have the opportunity of hearing from three fantastic speakers who will be able to share their expertise with us. Today we're going to be hearing from Philip Rash from the CAPS office, Kathleen Reyes from Belonging and Diversity, and Abigail Morrison from the Title IX office. And before we begin, I would like to invite Bella Brinkerhoff to come down and give our opening prayer. And then after that, I will turn the time over to Philip Rash.
Okay, I'm a little confused because I was thinking that this was the TikTok grief and loss support group. And so sorry about that. I have to change gears here a little bit. Obviously not a lot of TikTok users here, or else this is just so traumatic that you just don't want to laugh at it. It's too soon, right? Okay, sorry about that. So my name's Phil. I'm from CAPS. I'm one of the clinical faculty members. I've worked here at BYU for a long time. And what we want to do today is talk to you who are on the front lines. And we really appreciate what you do as TAs because you get to observe student behavior. You get to see students in a way that the professors often don't, or that other people in their lives often don't, okay? So the goal here is to not make you feel like you need to be a mental health professional or a counselor or anything like that, but it's to help us think about a couple things in broad terms that might help make our students' experience a little bit better. That we might be able to get them some help that they need, and to be able to recognize a little bit when they need some help for that. So I have some statistics on the board here. Um, the main concerns that we see at CAPS, and thus the main concerns that I think we see in general across the student body, would be anxiety and depression, academic distress, of course, and then relationship concerns. All right, all of these can really impact a student's ability to do well, or to do as well as they could. And so we want to be aware of these things. Mental health on college campuses has been in what has been considered kind of a crisis state for the last few years, beginning before COVID, really hit during COVID. And now we're starting to see a slight decline in the number and severity of students who are presenting at college counseling centers for mental health issues, but it's still really, really high. All right. So just to give you an idea, we won't go into the statistics any more than that. Excuse me. So there is an organization that exists called the JED Foundation, and they are all about student success and student mental health on campus. And they provided some really good guidelines for what perhaps we can do. Some of these may be a little out of your direct control, but we might be able to exert some influence with our faculty with whom we work to make a difference here. One thing is when you're introducing yourself at the beginning of the semester, at your very first lab or study group or something like that, is to make a genuine offer that, hey, you know what, you can talk to me. I'm open, I'm available. All right. Now, again, this doesn't mean that students are going to flock to you and say, I'm depressed, what am I going to do? But just having that open stance that this is something that I'm willing to talk, to take some time with you, can go a really long way to helping them feel more comfortable and then maybe sharing some of their struggles. Um, your training here in the college is great because it exposes you to a lot of good resources. So as you meet with students, just kind of keep in mind the various individuals that have presented to you, what those resources are that you've learned about. Kind of keep that list, maybe even written down somewhere, so that when a student comes to you, that you don't feel all the pressure oh, I've got to help this student myself, but we can say, hey, I know there's a resource that could deal with that. So to really be observant about the different resources, to be cognizant of the resources that you've used, that you found to be helpful, and to be able to share that with students. That's your main role as a TA. When someone comes to you needing some help, needing some direction of what they want to do, is to be able to provide them resources. You're not the one to actually do the work. That hopefully takes some load off of your shoulders. place those resources if possible in the syllabus, or perhaps suggest that to the faculty member with whom you work. Um, One thing that's kind of interesting, those of us who use Learning Suite, what's the default deadline and time to turn something in on Learning Suite? Does anybody know? What's that? 11:59. Right. Okay. What's wrong with that? What's that? It's late, right? And what do we know about our students? What do we know about ourselves? They're going to push those deadlines, right? And we know that sleep is so important. We know that students are going to procrastinate. It's kind of what we do in many situations. So we could help that out enormously. A very little thing by maybe suggesting to our faculty members that we move that deadline forward. So the classes that I teach, the deadlines are at 10 p.m. Just a little change. And we might get some resistance at that from some students at first because they're not used to that. But we make it clear. But just a simple change like that can help to eliminate these working into late at the hours and going up against a deadline and maybe missing that deadline and everything. So some other thing to do. Consider working with your faculty member about allowing exceptions for mental health reasons, right? Just like we would, like I hear this a lot from my colleagues who are teaching classes, especially during winter semester. There's flu, there's COVID, there's norovirus, there's RSV going around right now. So if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, please stay home. We'll work with you. Could it be that we could offer a similar thing to some students who may be dealing with depression or grief and loss or something like that? That again, a simple thing doesn't mean that we're going to modify the whole course for an individual. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be, need to do the core requirements of the course, but it does mean that maybe we can be a little more understanding with mental health issues too. Okay. Um, and then create an atmosphere of belonging and respect in the classroom, that we respect everyone. And you're going to hear from someone from the belonging office who I know will do a much better job at addressing that than I would. And so, but if we can create this environment where we feel like we're mutually respected and that we fit, that we're here and we have support, that can go a long way. Okay. Now, what do we watch for? All right. Um, and how many of you have been TAs before? You raise your hand. Okay, so you can probably vouch for some of this stuff. Some of the biggest red flags are actually some common student behavior. Missed assignments, frequent absences, a change in performance. Now, what happens a lot, students will miss assignments, and it doesn't mean there's something horribly going wrong in their life. But if we start to see a pattern, or if we start to see someone who previously was turning everything in, they were participating in class, they were always there, and then they just kind of stop, what we've learned over the years, chances are this isn't the only class they're doing that in. They're probably struggling in other classes as well, and could be very helpful for us at that point to do a simple intervention and ask to talk to them about it, okay, to reach out to them for that. Students who are falling asleep regularly, they may come very disheveled to classes, another sign that something's not going right there. If you read some inappropriate things or you hear some comments in classes that just don't seem right, make a note of that, and talk with your faculty member about it. Um, and especially content in essays or something that may lead you to think maybe something's not right here could serve as an important clue for you. Hey, we need to have a conversation about that. And again, we're just inviting a conversation. Okay. Now, how we do that can take a little bit of finesse here. Okay. It's probably not the best way just to go up to a student and say, hey, I think you might be depressed, right? Let's talk. That immediately might put someone on the defensive a little bit and actually shut down what the conversation could become before it ever happens. All right. So what we want to be able to do is, one, talk to an individual in private. Probably not best to do this at the beginning of a study group where there's 3 or 4 other people there or in the lab situation. But if it's possible to invite the student to an area that's a little bit private, they'll talk more. You'll be able to be more free in what you say, um, and then talk to them about what you've observed. Not, hey, I think you might be anxious. Hey, I think you might be depressed. But to say, hey, Joe, I've noticed that your assignments have been increasingly late. I noticed that you just really have not been attending classes. I'm wondering if there's something that I could do to be of help to you there. Be as simple as that. So acknowledge, so stating what the behavior that you observed, you're missing classes, you're not turning in work well or on time, or you just seem to be checked out of class. I'm wondering if there's anything that we should talk about. A simple invitation like that can be enough for most people to open up and say, well, just so you know, I have this going on in my life, or I have that going on in my life. I might need some extra consideration. And that's where you can then say, okay, well, here's some resources. One, maybe we could talk to the faculty member about this, but there are some other resources you may want to know about. There's CAPS, there's the Office of Belonging, there's the Title IX office, things like that. So it's just kind of that general formula: state your observation without judgment and invite the person to talk to you. Um, this can be an anxiety provoking experience for you because you may not have had any kind of a opportunity where you're going to perhaps talk to someone about something very significant like this and you don't know that person very well. So just know that you're going to be a little bit anxious, most likely, and that's okay. That's all right. But just try and breathe deeply, and understand that it's not you who needs to make any change. It's not you who's going to affect the change in the other person. You're a gateway, and the gateway will be to help that individual get to someone who then will do the heavy lifting for all that. Does that make sense for there? But to acknowledge that, yeah, this can be heavy. This can be anxiety provoking for you. Once a person starts to talk, your job is then to listen, just to listen, and to maybe confirm to the person that you've heard them. And then you can say, instead of just jumping, oh, okay, you're not doing very well, let's get you to CAPS. Maybe ask a couple more questions, or just listen to what they have to say and say, based on what you've told me, I'm wondering if you've considered CAPS, or I'm wondering if you've considered talking to the advisement center for your major. I'm wondering if you've considered going to the student health center. So we're not just jumping in and giving them something to do all at once, but we've invited the conversation, we're listening for their answer, and now we gently recommend or refer to another office that could be helpful. If you could, if it fits your schedule and you feel comfortable doing it, a referral is always best if you could do a direct referral. Hey, let me walk you to CAPS. We have that happen we have faculty members and TAs who walk people to CAPS all the time. And that's just a really good way to show, hey, here's a nice handoff. We know that the person is getting the help that they need. Okay. So maybe consider that. Um, if you decide that you're going to um, provide some resources or maybe develop some kind of a plan for remediation for your class, if a student is experiencing a lot of emotional turmoil, their memory's shot. Okay. So maybe write things down for them just so that they have something that they can take away from your conversation. So here's a plan. You're going to talk to your advisement center. You're going to talk to our faculty member. You're going to meet with your advisor in FHSS. Write that down, the numbers that they could, and the addresses if possible, so that they have a plan that they can leave with. Don't underestimate the power of your connection. Even if you don't know them very well, they know you. They know you, and you are actually someone that they see as an authority, right? And in our culture, in our climate, we tend to kind of gravitate to authority. We're used to that, and that someone is going to be able to perhaps help me or help me get the help that I need. And so you have money in the bank just because of who you are. And then you have extra money in the bank because you are good people who want to help for that. All right. Never promise confidentiality. You don't need to do that, because what if a student tells you something that you really need some extra help on? Let's say they discuss something that could be, dealing with self-harm or something like that. You don't ever want to promise, or you're never going to tell anybody about that. And most people, like the vast majority of people, don't even want that confidentiality. They want help. That's why they're reaching out to you or they're responding to your invitation. Okay. You don't have to do this alone. We have consultation services at CAP. So if you're worried about a student, you can contact. If you would, can I give you some homework? Because we don't have time to go through all of this today. But if you could just at some point during the day go to caps.byu.edu, you can read about all the services that we provide. And we offer everything from individual therapy to group therapy to one-time consultations with students. or with TAs if you're worried about a student and how you could work with the student. You can call CAPS and say, hey, can I meet with Phil or someone who can walk me through how to perhaps help this person, and we can do that as well. There's lots of different ways that we can help students, and so just maybe be aware a little bit of the resources that we have for that. Okay, and thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Alrighty. My name is Kathleen Reyes. I am the program manager for Belonging and Diversity in the College of Family, Home, and Social Sciences. This college, your college. Show of hands, how many of you know where the dean's office is located for FHSS? Okay. All right. Not good, guys. Okay, we're gonna do better. All right, so the dean's office for FHSS is located in this building on the 9th floor. All right, again, how many of you know where the dean's office is located for FHSS? Love it. Okay, perfect. I share this because if for any reason you have any questions as TAs or students, because you guys are students as well, please come up and ask us. We may not have all the answers for you, but we can definitely help you with um, uh, putting you in contact with the correct person, the right department, whatever the case may be. Okay, so prior to starting, I do want to share this only because I feel like it'll play it'll play well with the information that I'm about to give you. So aside from the fact that currently I'm a little nervous speaking to you, I'm overwhelmed in life in general and just work, personal life, whatever the case is. I'm feeling somewhat in certain spaces, and also just kind of dealing with mental health. I'm not gonna say issues, but just things that you deal with, and that could be depression. Kind of is seasonal depression is a thing that really does affect me. I'm sharing these things because I'm being vocal about it, and not everyone is vocal about it, nor has to be vocal about it. But it's one of those where, aside from yourselves, you may be navigating some of these things or other things, but you have students that are also going through this. And like Phil Rash from CAPS mentioned, mental health is very important, and just those resources are very important for you to know. Again, as TAs, you're overseeing these students, and how can you play a role? It's not fully on you, but being knowledgeable on the resources can help. So I'll go ahead and delve into, I'm going to share a few examples about maybe bias awareness and just being inclusive in the classroom. And I'd like to start off with what belonging is. Belonging is the human emotional need to be accepted, an accepted member of a group. Whether it is family, friends, coworkers, a religion, or something else, humans have an inherent desire to belong and be an important part of something greater than themselves. A student's sense of belonging can positively affect their academic performance, social emotional development, and classroom behavior. You, TAs, can contribute to building a welcoming environment by supporting students academically, emotionally, and socially. Um, so cultural awareness and sensitivity. This includes diversity, and inclusion, bias awareness, and inclusive language. It encompasses a lot more than just this. I'm going to just be concentrating on a few examples so that way maybe it can help with you recognizing it if it is happening in your classroom or with your interactions with the students, or also your faculty members. Now, with the examples I do give, if it says teacher, please do insert in there TAs as well, okay? So an example of bias awareness in the classroom would be a teacher actively recognizing and addressing their tendency to call on male students more frequently than female students during class discussions, and making a conscious effort to evenly distribute questions across genders to ensure all voices are heard equally. So I've definitely been in a lot of classrooms where a lot of times they have a higher male population, or the complete opposite, a higher female population. And it's one of those of being aware of where those questions are going to. Is that being evenly distributed? I've been in spaces where I noticed that not a lot of women are called on, and I do understand that factors are they raising their hand, or are they wanting to participate? But I think it's definitely important that we take an active role in being able to be like, oh, you know what? Let's wait a minute. Let's see if anyone else has something to say. And you know how sometimes there's someone in the classroom that's always raising their hand, and you've seen faculty kind of play it cool with like, okay, cool. I have an answer here, but let's give someone else an opportunity. Language like that, being able to create that space, that little moment of having other students maybe feel like, okay, great, maybe I can say something now. Other examples of bias awareness in the classroom include acknowledging cultural differences. A teacher modifies their teaching style to accommodate students from diverse cultural backgrounds, avoiding assumptions about prior knowledge based on ethnicity. Now, I feel that we are all very aware that at BYU there's a majority when it comes to race and ethnicity. And that's something that we understand, but also how can we definitely create those inclusive moments of maybe other people that are from different cultures, different backgrounds, different countries, different races, etc. I'm going to go to challenging stereotypes. When discussing historical figures, a teacher actively highlights diverse perspectives and challenges stereotypical representation of certain groups. Now, I'm aware that not all classes have our history. We have 9 different departments. There's so much material being talked about, but this is an example it was a historical example, but please try and see how you can utilize and maybe change that into uh, um sorry, sometimes things come to me in Spanish and not English. Um, see how you can go ahead and translate that into the topic of the class, the classroom. Student names. There are a lot, or even faculty names as well. There are a lot of times where names may be different or difficult for ourselves to pronounce. I think it's one of those, and I've always been an advocate of learning how to pronounce someone's name, not just going right to, can I just call you? And my name's Kathleen, guys. I've learned that it's kind of easy to say, but I'll have people be like, well, can I just call you? I'm like, no, no, no. This is what I'd like to be called. And okay, you asked, but I've answered. But also if it's a more unique name, asking, hey, how do you pronounce your name? Teach me how to pronounce your name. And this is with faculty as well. I know that you meet with your faculty members, and maybe there'll be times that you can open up and have conversations such as these to also, excuse me, help them while they're teaching in case you notice that something like this occurs. Inclusive language. So something that we are very well aware as well here at BYU is that majority of teachers, faculty, staff, students are Latter-day Saints, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Um, let's not go into spaces and assume that everyone is a member of this faith because it's not the case. We have students that maybe are of different faiths or non-faiths or not religious at all. Although it is important that we have this integration of the gospel, and that's a lot of the reasons why we're here. There are spaces that we can definitely be inclusive in this way. And an example would be LDS terms. I know that a lot of these examples have been shared by students in our college where sometimes these students that are not of our faith don't understand the terminology being used that a lot of us are accustomed to, and maybe pausing for a moment and not asking, does anyone not know what that means, but giving just a brief definition of like, oh, and this means X, Y, and Z, or giving space for that because that has happened and I've seen it happen a few times. So that's definitely an example of being inclusive. Or also, a lot of what I've heard of as we, as a society, become more knowledgeable in mental health or a term that's used is like on the spectrum, we can utilize neurodiverse, right? That's a word we can utilize. And these are just examples in that way. The key aspects of bias awareness, and I have about another minute. Self-reflection, teachers or TAs actively examining their own biases and how they might impact their interactions with students. We all have biases. I personally have experienced me having them as well, and I think it's what we do with that afterwards or how we go about learning more about that. I believe that being able to build an inclusive environment for all, regardless of our differences, is very important, and I believe that our differences definitely is a positive. I feel that I can tie this back to the gospel, and I love so much how it's worldwide, right? And we can learn from each other's cultures, but also having this common thing. But I feel that we can learn from each other and those differences. The only other thing I'd like to add, or example I'd like to add, would be um, feedback and collaboration. We're all here to learn in life, and I think that especially in these spaces of learning more about belonging, we can always be learning, always be growing. So I do invite you to do that. These are things that you can look up yourself. But also, if for any reason you have any questions and maybe you'd like to speak to me or have, again, questions, please come up to the 9th floor. My email is on there. My office is there. And yeah, we can have a conversation or not have a conversation. Maybe you need information on resources. But thank you so much for everything that you do. And that's my time. Thanks.
Okay, let's see here. jump right in. I feel like both the other speakers just provided the perfect scaffolding to frame our conversation here about Title IX. And I know it's a ton of information that you're getting, but I hope that one of the key takeaways is that there are so many people here at BYU, offices designed to support you, both as students and in your roles as TAs. You come up a lot of different kinds of situations and different things like that. We want you to know you can reach out for support with questions, connecting students with our offices, all those kinds of things. So as I jump into this, who here has familiarity with Title IX in any way, shape, or form? Knows about Title IX? Okay, most of us here in this room have some level of familiarity with Title IX. So some of this is going to be some review, but I'm hopeful that all of us can take something away from here. So Title IX, at its core, this law was passed in the 1970s. It's looking at the issue of discrimination on the basis of sex within institutions of education. As a law, it's expanded a bit. It covers a couple other really relevant issues to us here as a college campus. The BYU Title IX mission, this is our mission specific here, is that we are dedicated to promoting equitable treatment on the basis of sex by coordinating the university's efforts to prevent and respond to sex discrimination and sexual misconduct. So those two bolded words really sum up the BYU Title IX mission. On the prevention side of things, we hold workshops on things like consent, healthy relationships. We work with residence life, our athletic teams, all those sorts of things. And then on the response side, if a member of our campus community here experiences something that would be contrary to the BYU sexual harassment policy, that's something that can be reported to the Title IX office. And I'll talk a little bit about what response looks like in different situations. So again, this has been already kind of covered, but I'll just say it really quickly because I think this is something that so much of what we see come through our office could be prevented if all of us were keeping this top of mind, right? Here at BYU, we are committed to promoting and maintaining a safe and respectful environment for the campus community. And we all really do have a very real role in creating this campus environment of safety and respect for everybody, right? So you have a role as a TA, as a roommate, as a student in your own classrooms. And Title IX is just one of those lenses through which to think. But as was brought up with the Office of Belonging, there's different ways to think about, am I creating a culture of safety and respect around me? So, right, this law was passed. It covers the issue of sex discrimination. Under that umbrella, it's come to encompass a couple other topics that, again, these are probably more of what we see in our office and the kinds of things that you may encounter as a TA. So this includes sexual violence, so physical sexual acts against a person's will, so non-consensual sexual events. Sexual harassment, this is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. So this can be, things like jokes, inappropriate conversations. I want to highlight this can happen obviously, in person. It also can happen online, like maybe or like through a group meet chat, for example. So maybe in your role as a TA, like this might be a situation, we've seen this come up where a discussion board is going into problematic territory, right? That can be considered sexual harassment. Absolutely something you want to loop your professor in on and we want to address. We also cover pregnancy related concerns. So if a student is seeking academic adjustments, I'm experiencing really severe morning sickness or I have a doctor's appointment or something like this, those kinds of things would be arranged through our office as well. So if you have a student saying, hey, yeah, I need to miss these classes, refer them to Title IX. So we make sure we get that documented and in place, and then it would be our office that would facilitate that process. So the BYU sexual harassment policy, these are the kinds of things that can be reported to Title IX, or you can refer a student to if they disclose something of this nature. So sex discrimination, right? That's what it sounds like. There's no other reason why this person isn't welcome on the research team except Professor Smith doesn't like men. Obviously, it's going to be a problem for 50% of the student population and something we would want to address. Sexual harassment, again, that in-person or online conduct, unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. Sexual assault, sexual violence, so non-consensual sexual events. Domestic violence, dating violence is also known as intimate partner violence, and stalking. So if you've experienced any of these things, a roommate, someone discloses something to you, these are the sorts of things that we can help out with in the Title IX office. Something that I think is really important for all of us to hold as we talk about these sensitive topics, or if someone does disclose something to you, statistically, this has affected some of us in this room or someone that we really love, right? But just really keeping top of mind that while sexual assault and sexual harassment, both of those things can take a lot of different forms. One thing is always true, and that is just that nobody ever deserves this kind of treatment, right? So sometimes when someone discloses something, like we might hear questions of what were they wearing or why were they on that Tinder date at 2 a.m., things like that. We really want to shift away from that and just remember, if someone uses their agency to violate another person, it's on them. We never earn this we don't deserve this kind of treatment ever. So, how to make a report? There's a lot of different ways to make a report. Something I do want to touch on in here. So, full-time employees at BYU are mandatory reporters. As TAs, it might be that someone discloses something in, say, a reflective paper or something. I experienced sexual assault in high school, and then they're writing a paper about policy application in wherever. That let your professor know that is something that would be reportable to the Title IX office. I'll talk a little bit about what happens when those reports do come in. But in terms of ways to make a report, title9.bua.edu, it's the Roman numerals, so IX. This is a screen grab just from our website there. You can click report an incident, fill out an online incident report. Say you're meeting with somebody, you can let them know, hey, if you go to the Title IX website, we can schedule an appointment here together, or you can do a warm handoff, as Dr. Rash was bringing up. We have students all the time who will bring a fellow student or a roommate, or professors will escort people down to the Title IX office. That's also very welcome. Email us, title9@byu.edu. Give us a call. Our office is located on the first floor of the Wilkinson Student Center. Another way to report, I'm just curious, who knows what ethics point is at all? Oh, we've got 2 or 3 people in here. Okay, not very many of us. This is a good one to know about. This is not just for Title IX related issues, but say you observe something that's deeply concerning to you. This is a third-party administered hotline that you can both call and you can report online. So maybe you witness an instance of racism or of theft of BYU property or something like that, something that's just ethically concerning to you. This is a third-party hotline that you can call and they'll route that to the appropriate offices. So what happens when you make a report? What are the next steps? What does that response side of the BYU Title IX mission look like? Most simply, the most important thing to us is that we're going to be reaching out and letting students know about supportive resources and measures available to them. That's the most important piece. In more than 99% of our cases, the person's they're in the role of complainant. So this would be the main, the person in the role of survivor, victim. That role, they are in charge of what happens next. There are a few exceptions to this, but they're very rare. Exceptions would be things like it was a BYU employee who, there's a non-consensual sexual contact type event that took place. In that kind of situation, as a university, we have to move forward with something. Most of the time, it's, BYU student A and BYU student B, and we're going to very much allow the complainant that autonomy, the choice in deciding what happens next. The most important thing to us is, what do you need? That might include referrals to counseling. It might look like academic adjustments, right? If someone was sexually assaulted last Friday and then they haven't made it to class for a week, we want to provide some leniency there, right? So the most important piece is that supportive measures and resources piece. We're also going to be providing information about how to file a formal complaint, or they can leave it as an informational report. Should they file a formal complaint, there are different options available. There's something known as an informal resolution, all the way up to an investigation. And so we would explain in detail what those options look like so a person can make a fully informed decision on what's right for them. Throughout that process, both complainants and respondents, so that would be the alleged party, are going to be treated equitably. That's very important to us to preserve the integrity of our investigative process. Another really good resource to know about are university survivor advocates. This is Dr. Lisa Levitt. She is the lead university advocate. They provide free and confidential advocacy services, including individual and group counseling for students affected by any kind of sexual abuse, sexual assault at any point in their life. And they're separate from Title IX and totally confidential. We also have a confidential advisor for respondents. So Dr. Scott Hosford, say a student receives a letter from the Title IX office letting them know, hey, there's allegations and there's going to be an investigation. And that can be a really scary, anxiety-inducing experience, right? Very understandably so. And so we have this confidential resource for that person as well, so they can have support throughout the process. A question that commonly comes up is what's the relationship between the Title IX office and the Honor Code office? And the way I kind of explain this is both of our offices are really important to the BYU mission and to creating this culture of safety and respect that is so important to us, right? We just have some slight differences. And so, because of those differences, we are very intentionally kept separate from each other. So, being a victim of sexual assault is never going to be considered a violation of the Honor Code. And then we have this very important policy known as the amnesty and leniency policy. So, amnesty is granted for any Honor Code violations that arise out of the same facts and circumstances of a report. What this looks like in a real life type situation is say someone's reporting and there were elements, maybe there was substance use involved at the time, or it could be that this happened within the context of a relationship where there's also consensual sexual activity, or this is absolutely important to our LGBTQIA plus students. And so this amnesty piece comes into place. The reason why we have this is we want to eliminate any kind of barrier for a person to be able to report, to get access to the Title IX adjudication process if that's something they're looking for, as well as just the support and the resources that are available to them. So we're going to be preserving confidentiality, not sharing the identity of a victim or witness with the Honor Code office. And I just want to say too, the Honor Code office, they are wonderful. Their ears are really perked to these kinds of situations, right? If something is reported up to the Honor Code office, they immediately will go, oh, you know what? Actually, this falls more under Title IX, and they'll send it right down to us, and then we don't have further involvement from there. So they really, again, like we really deeply care about these issues and about getting students connected with resources that can be helpful. Are there any questions up to this point? It's all feeling pretty clear? Okay. I know it's a ton of information. I'm going to fly through kind of this next section here, but I just want to touch on this briefly. So, thinking about prevention, right? What can we do to prevent the kinds of things that we see come through the Title IX office? And really, the number one thing is having a good, solid understanding of consent. What does consent look like for me? How do I practice it with another person? And at the end of the day, we like to think about this as agency, right? Consent at the end of the day is being able to decide what's a yes, what's a no, how to communicate that, and then how do you preserve the agency of another person? How do I really understand what is a yes or a no for the other person? So, consent, when we're talking about it in a Title IX context, is an agreement between participants to engage in sexual activity. And when I say sexual activity here at BYU, I cast a very wide net. This is any kind of romantic touch, right? We need a good practice of consent for hand on the knee, kissing, making out, up through marital relations, oral sex, sexual intercourse. Anywhere on that ladder of intimacy, we need to know this is a yes and respect if it is a no. So this is a lot of what consent is not, right? If someone's been kidnapped, I hope that's very obvious to all of us that that is not consensual. But we like thinking a lot about what is consent? What can it look like? And so using the framework of affirmative consent, it's the presence of yes and not just the absence of a no, right? So we're looking for something better than just silence. This person was there, so I thought it was consensual. Other words to describe consent that come to my mind are active. Again, it's not a passive thing. We're looking for a really active and present practice of consent. Voluntary, no one's being threatened, coerced, overly pressured to be there for something they don't want to be there for. Enthusiastic, like we know it's a yes for both people and we're respecting hesitation or a clear no. Ongoing, this part is also really important in that maybe it's a yes and then Friday night comes around, the person doesn't want to go on a date. It would obviously be insane to like go throw a pillowcase over the head and kidnap them and take them on the date, right? Like we need to respect if someone changes their mind. Like it was a yes, but actually it's a no for me. And I'm actively checking in for that. And then our gold standard is that it's verbal. This is especially true in the beginning of relationships or like if there's new kind of physical touch within the relationship. All of these things really do so much to prevent a lot, well, actually not, I mean, almost everything that we see come through our office. So, I'm short on time, so I'm not gonna go through these examples, but we do have a number of upcoming events that are coming up. This is something that you can, feel free to share with students. And I do wanna leave, are there any questions about anything that I've talked about? How to make a report, any of those kinds of things? Okay, perfect. You all are wonderful. Thank you for letting me share a little bit about our office and know that the door is always open.
Well, thank you again to Phil, Kathleen, and Abigail for those fantastic presentations. Yeah, they were very informative. Well done. I just want to also remind you, if you have not, please fill out this form so that we can get your attendance marked for today. And as a reminder, next week at the same time, same place here at 11 a.m., we're going to have our second mandatory in-person session. And in that meeting, we're going to be discussing crucial conversations, how to give valuable feedback to students, as well as learning some like really hands-on practical applications for Learning Suite, Canvas, and helping field some of those questions. So it should be really helpful. As you know, there is the in-person training, and then there's also online training. And if you have any questions about that, or if you have not been assigned to it, it should be in your workday. So if you've not seen that, what you need to do is talk to your direct supervisor, who would be the faculty member that you work directly under. And if they are unable to help you, you could go to your department manager, or you could also send me an email. Again, my name is Courtney Collingridge, and I'm in the dean's office, and I'm happy to help with anything with that. It should take you less than 30 minutes to do the online portion. And again, it's just more resources to help you be set up for success.